I never thought my own sister would erase my daughter from family memories. But there she was, my little Sophia, blurred out of every wedding photo like some kind of shameful secret. When I confronted Melissa about it, her response was ice cold. "Your daughter's punk phase ruined my perfect aesthetic." Sophia had simply dyed her hair blue for self-expression. She was 15 for crying out loud. That day, I promised myself I'd never forgive my sister for making my child feel invisible. But life has a funny way of testing our resolve. 3 months later, Melissa's doctor delivered devastating news. Her kidneys were failing, and I was the only compatible donor in our family. Suddenly, the sister who thought my daughter wasn't good enough for her wedding photos needed something only I could give her: a chance at survival. As I sat in that hospital waiting room, staring at the transplant consent forms, all I could think about were those blurred wedding photos and my daughter's tears when she discovered what her aunt had done. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, Melissa and I were never the close sisters you see in Hallmark movies. Being 4 years older, she always saw herself as superior, the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was Sarah, the afterthought, the one who was told to be more like your sister at every parent-teacher conference. Our childhood home was a typical New England colonial with pristine lawns and perfect shutters. Mom was on the PTA and Dad coached Little League. Appearances were everything in our upper-middle-class neighborhood, and Melissa understood this social currency better than anyone. I still remember my Sweet 16, when Mom and Dad promised a party at the local country club. 2 weeks before, Melissa announced her engagement to Brad, her college sweetheart from Yale. My celebration was immediately downgraded to pizza in the basement so they could redirect funds to her engagement party. When I cried about it, Dad pulled me aside and said, "Your sister's milestones are once-in-a-lifetime events, Sarah. You'll have other birthdays." That night, I wrote in my diary that Melissa's happiness would always eclipse mine. Then came my high school graduation, where Melissa managed to announce her pregnancy during my party. The timing wasn't coincidental. She was already 4 months along, but had kept it secret until my moment in the spotlight. Everyone abandoned the congratulations table to fawn over her baby news. Mom even took down my graduation banner to put up a grandma-to-be sign. Despite everything, I worked hard to forge my own path. I got a scholarship to NYU, studied graphic design, and built a successful freelance business that allowed me to work from home while raising Sophia. My daughter became my world after her father left when she was just 2. We created our own little family unit, complete with Sunday pancake traditions and summer road trips along the East Coast. Meanwhile, Melissa married into the Harrison family, old money with connections throughout New England. Her husband, Brad, became a partner at his father's law firm, and they built a McMansion in the same town as our parents. Their daughter, Emma, was the picture-perfect child, blonde, well-behaved, and dressed exclusively in Janie and Jack outfits that Melissa documented meticulously on social media. When our father had his heart attack 5 years ago, it was me who took unpaid leave for 6 weeks to help with his recovery. I drove him to appointments, managed his medications, and helped him with physical therapy exercises. Melissa visited twice, both times for less than an hour, claiming she was too busy with Emma's ballet competitions. Yet when Dad recovered, he used his savings to help Melissa and Brad with the down payment on their vacation home in Cape Cod. My contribution to his recovery was acknowledged with a thank you card and a $100 gift certificate to Olive Garden. Last Thanksgiving, Dad announced what he called his grand gesture. He was dividing his retirement savings to give each of us an early inheritance. When the statements arrived, Melissa received 3 times what I did. The note attached to mine read, "Melissa has a family to support," as if my daughter and I weren't family enough. But nothing prepared me for what happened at Melissa's vow renewal ceremony this past spring. The ceremony where my daughter, her only niece, was deliberately erased from the family record, all because blue hair didn't match the color scheme. Melissa's 10-year vow renewal was the talk of our social circle for months. She'd hired a prestigious Boston wedding planner and transformed the historic Rosecliff Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, into what she called a celebration of family legacy. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 months before the event, Melissa sent an elaborate invitation with a 4-page insert detailing her dress code requirements. Coastal elegant attire in shades of cream, blush, and champagne only. No exceptions. At the bottom, a handwritten note specifically for me read, "Please make sure Sophia dresses appropriately. No unconventional hair colors or styles." I called her immediately. Sophia's hair is her form of self-expression. She's not changing it for your party. Then she can wear a wig, Melissa replied without hesitation, or she can sit out the formal photos. I've invested too much in this day to have it ruined by teenage rebellion. I should have seen it as the warning it was. The week before the renewal, Mom called to mediate, which really meant pressuring me to conform. "Your sister has always been particular about aesthetics, Sarah. Can't you just help keep the peace? It's only hair. It can be dyed back." What they didn't understand was that Sophia had dyed her hair blue after months of being bullied at school. It was her reclamation of identity, her way of embracing what made her different instead of trying to disappear. I wasn't about to force her to hide that triumph. The day before the ceremony, we arrived at the Newport mansion for the rehearsal dinner. Melissa's face fell when she saw Sophia's still blue hair, but she said nothing, just whispered something to her wedding planner, who kept shooting glances our way throughout the evening. That night in our hotel room, Sophia asked, "Should I have just worn a wig, Mom?" "Absolutely not," I told her. "You never have to make yourself smaller for someone else's comfort." If only I had followed my own advice more often with my sister. The morning of the ceremony was a flurry of activity. Professional makeup artists and hairstylists transformed the bridal suite into a glamour station. When our turn came, the makeup artist glanced at Sophia's blue hair, then checked her clipboard. "I have special instructions for you two," she said carefully. "Minimal styling, basic makeup only." I noticed we were excluded from the pre-ceremony champagne toast and the family legacy video Melissa had commissioned. During the ceremony itself, we were seated in the last row, despite there being empty seats in the family section up front. But the real blow came during the formal photography session on the mansion's famous marble terrace overlooking the Atlantic. The photographer called out family groupings, and when it was time for the extended family photos, the assistant directed us to stand off to the side, partially hidden behind our cousins. "Actually," Melissa intervened, "let's do this group without Sarah and Sophia. We'll do a separate shot with them later." That separate shot never happened. During the reception, I overheard Brad's mother telling another guest, "Melissa had to make some difficult decisions about who would be prominently featured today. Some people just don't understand the importance of family image." I kept my composure, focusing instead on making sure Sophia enjoyed the elaborate dessert table and the live band. She had made friends with one of the catering staff, a college student who complimented her hair and slipped her extra chocolate-covered strawberries. As dinner wound down, Dad clinked his glass for the toasts. After Brad's emotional tribute to Melissa, Dad stood up shakily, pulling note cards from his pocket. 10 years ago, I watched my perfect daughter marry into a family that matched our values and aspirations, he began. Today, I'm proud to announce another gift to honor their commitment to family excellence. He unveiled a large envelope. "Melissa and Brad, your mother and I have decided to gift you the family lake house in the Berkshires. Your summers there as a child brought you so much joy, and we know you'll create the same perfect memories with Emma." The lake house, the place where I'd found refuge during my divorce, where Sophia had learned to swim and catch fireflies. The property Dad had always said would be shared between both his daughters. I felt Sophia's hand slip into mine under the table as my father continued. "Some might wonder about this decision. but we believe in investing in success. Melissa and Brad have built exactly the kind of family we always envisioned carrying our legacy forward. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone. As I splashed cold water on my face, a notification pinged on my phone. It was from my cousin Jen. "Have you seen the photos Melissa just posted? Check Instagram now." There, on my screen, was a series of professional photos from earlier that day. Beautiful, magazine-worthy family portraits. In every group shot that should have included us, Sophia's blue hair was blurred out, her face obscured, while mine was awkwardly cropped or shadowed. The caption read, "Perfect day celebrating family with those who truly understand what that means. #legacy renewal, #bliss." As I stared at the digital erasure of my daughter, another text came through, this one from Mom. "Please don't make a scene. We can discuss the lake house another time." But this wasn't about the lake house anymore. This was about my child being literally blurred out of family history, deemed unworthy of being seen, while I was expected to smile and accept it, just as I always had. I walked back into the reception hall with a strange calm. Years of swallowed words and suppressed feelings had crystallized into perfect clarity. Across the room, Melissa was holding court near the 5-tier cake, accepting compliments on her picture-perfect day. Our mother hovered nearby, anxiously watching my approach. The band had just finished a set, leaving a momentary quiet as I reached my sister. "Can I see your phone?" I asked, my voice steady. "What? Why?" Melissa clutched her phone to her sequined bodice. "I want to see the photos you posted, the ones where you blurred out your only niece." The circle around her grew quiet. Brad's father cleared his throat and stepped away. "This isn't the time, Sarah," Melissa hissed, her perfect smile straining. "We can discuss this later." "No, I think this is exactly the right time," I replied, showing my own phone screen with the altered images. "I want everyone here to see what family values really mean to you." I turned to the small crowd that had gathered. "My daughter, Melissa's niece, has been digitally erased from these family photos because her blue hair didn't match the aesthetic. 15 years old, and she's been blurred out of existence." Gasps rippled through the group. Someone whispered, "She didn't." Melissa's face flushed red beneath her professional makeup. "You're making a scene over nothing. We'll take more photos later when Sophia's hair is back to normal." "Normal?" I repeated. "My daughter dyed her hair after being bullied for months at school. This blue hair represents her finding her confidence again. But you wouldn't know that because you've never once asked how she's doing." Our father pushed through the crowd. "Sarah, that's enough. You're embarrassing the family." "The family?" I laughed, a sharp, unfamiliar sound. "Let's talk about family, Dad. Let's talk about how you're giving the lake house, where both your grandchildren have spent summers, exclusively to Melissa. Let's talk about how my child and I have never been enough family for either of you." Mom appeared at Dad's elbow. "Sarah, please." "Did you know," I continued, addressing the now silent reception, "that when my father had his heart attack, I took 6 weeks off work to care for him. I drove him to every appointment, managed his medications, helped him relearn to button his shirts." I pointed to Melissa. "She visited twice, for less than an hour each time." Melissa's perfectly contoured face hardened. "Some of us have real responsibilities, Sarah. We can't all play artist from home." "My responsibilities include teaching my daughter that her worth isn't tied to fitting someone else's idea of perfection. That family doesn't blur you out when you're inconvenient." I turned to walk away, but Melissa grabbed my arm. "You've always been jealous," she spat, "always playing victim. If you'd just tried harder, maybe you wouldn't be a divorced single mother living paycheck to paycheck While you what?" I interrupted. "While you married into money? While you chase Instagram perfection and treat people like accessories?" I gently removed her hand. "I feel sorry for you, Melissa. I really do." As I turned to leave, I spotted Sophia standing in the doorway, her blue hair catching the light. She heard everything. One more thing, I said, turning back. Since we're all celebrating family today, this seems like the right time to share some news I've been keeping to myself. I took a deep breath. 2 months ago, I took a DNA test, curious about our family health history. The room grew impossibly quieter. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that Dad and I don't share DNA. I looked directly at my father, whose face had drained of color. Care to explain that, Dad? Or should I ask Mom? Our mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Apparently, I continued, family legacy is more complicated than you thought. I walked to Sophia and put my arm around her shoulders. Together, we headed for the exit as chaos erupted behind us. The last thing I heard was my father's voice, uncharacteristically small. "Barbara, what is she talking about?" In the rental car, Sophia looked at me with wide eyes. "Mom, is it true about Grandpa?" I nodded, hands shaking as I started the engine. "I'm sorry you found out this way. I wasn't planning to announce it like that, but seeing those blurred photos—" "It's okay," Sophia said, surprising me with her calmness. "Actually, it's kind of amazing." When I gave her a questioning look, she explained, "They've been making us feel like we don't belong in their perfect family for years. Turns out, maybe we never did. And maybe that's not such a bad thing." As we drove away from the mansion, the weight of secrets and years of inadequacy began to lift from my shoulders. We weren't the ones who didn't measure up. We were just measuring ourselves against the wrong family. The drive back to our hotel was silent, but strangely peaceful. I'd expected to feel regret or anxiety after my outburst, but instead felt only relief, like I'd finally set down a heavy burden I'd been carrying since childhood. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls, from Mom, from cousins, from Dad's sister Nancy, who'd always been kinder to me than most. I ignored them all, except for one from my cousin Jen. "Holy shit, Sarah. Call me when you can. P.S. You're my hero." The next morning, Sophia and I checked out early and headed home to our apartment in Brooklyn. On the drive, Sophia asked the questions I'd been expecting. Who was my biological father? How long had I known? Did this change everything? "I don't have all the answers yet," I told her honestly. The DNA test showed I'm half Irish, half Eastern European, which doesn't match Dad's German-English background. I requested more information from the testing company, but hadn't heard back before the wedding. 3 days after we returned home, I received an email from a man named Patrick Donnelly. The DNA company had connected us as a likely half-sibling match. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Manhattan, where he brought old photographs and a family story that finally made sense of my origins. Patrick explained that our biological father was his dad, Michael Donnelly, who had worked with my mother at an advertising agency in the early 80s. They'd had a brief affair while my mother's marriage to Dad was going through a rough patch. Michael had never known about me. He'd moved to Chicago shortly after the affair ended and passed away from cancer 5 years ago. "But," Patrick said, sliding a photo across the table, "you have 3 half-siblings who would really like to meet you." The photograph showed Patrick with his 2 sisters, all with the same wavy dark hair and deep-set eyes that had always made me look different from the rest of my blonde family. Their faces held a warmth that felt instantly familiar. "We've got a big, messy Irish Catholic family in Chicago," Patrick explained. "Nothing fancy, but everyone's welcome, blue hair and all." I found myself crying in that coffee shop, mourning a biological father I'd never know, while simultaneously discovering a new branch of family I never knew existed. Meanwhile, the fallout from Melissa's vow renewal continued to ripple through our family. Mom finally called, not to apologize, but to inform me that Dad had been hospitalized with chest pains after my revelation. "The doctors say it's just anxiety, but you need to consider what your actions have done to this family," she said. "Which family is that, Mom?" I asked quietly. "The real one, or the one you and Dad and Melissa have pretended we were?" The conversation ended with her hanging up, but 2 days later, Dad called himself. His voice sounded older, more fragile. "I've always known," he admitted, surprising me. "Your mother told me about the affair before you were born. I chose to raise you as my own. I thought I was doing the right thing by never telling you." "Then why?" I asked. "Have you always treated me differently?" His long pause told me he'd never considered this question before. "I don't know," he finally said. "Maybe I was trying too hard to compensate with Melissa, to make sure she never felt less loved as the one who was biologically mine." Another pause. "I got it backwards, didn't I?" It wasn't the apology I deserved, but it was more honest than anything he'd said to me in 40 years. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from the family lawyer. Dad had revised his will, splitting the lake house equally between Melissa and me, with provisions ensuring both grandchildren would always have access to it. Sophia and I took a weekend trip to Chicago in early July, where we were welcomed into the boisterous Donnelly family with open arms and no expectations. Patrick's sisters, Maeve and Colleen, embraced me like they'd been waiting for me their whole lives. Their children, my nieces and nephews, immediately adopted Sophia as their cool cousin from New York. No one commented on her hair, except to ask what brand of dye created such a vibrant blue. As August approached, I received an unexpected text from Melissa. "My annual physical showed some concerning lab results. Doctor wants me to see a specialist." I called her immediately, our first conversation since the vow renewal confrontation. Her voice lacked its usual confidence as she explained that her kidney function was severely compromised due to an autoimmune condition she'd been ignoring for years. The specialist had recommended a transplant sooner rather than later. "They're testing Brad first," she said, "but his blood type isn't compatible. Mom and Dad are too old to be donors." The implication hung in the air between us. Despite everything, despite the years of subtle cruelty and the blatant disrespect toward my daughter, my sister needed me. 2 days later, my phone rang with results from Melissa's transplant team. I was a match, a surprisingly good one, considering we were only half-siblings. The doctor explained the procedure, the recovery time, the lifelong impacts of donating a kidney. That night, I sat Sophia down for a difficult conversation. "Aunt Melissa needs a kidney transplant," I explained. "I'm a match." My wise daughter considered this. "Are you going to do it?" "I'm thinking about it," I said honestly. "What would you do?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "Remember when you told me we don't make ourselves smaller for other people's comfort?" she finally said. "I think maybe this is the opposite. Sometimes we make ourselves bigger, bigger than the hurt, bigger than the past." The next day, I called Melissa and told her I would be her donor, but with conditions. First, you will apologize to Sophia, in person, for blurring her out of those photos. Second, you will post the unedited photos with a public apology. And third, you will come to family therapy with me after the surgery. Her voice broke as she agreed to all three. 2 weeks before the scheduled surgery, Melissa and Brad came to our Brooklyn apartment. Awkward doesn't begin to describe that initial meeting, but when Melissa saw Sophia, her hair now a vibrant purple, she burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she said, hugging my startled daughter. "I was cruel and shallow and wrong." Later that night, after they'd left, Sophia showed me Melissa's Instagram post. The original, unedited family photos with a lengthy caption acknowledging her mistake and expressing gratitude for second chances. The comment section was flooded with supportive messages, but the one that caught my eye came from Melissa's perfect daughter, Emma. "So proud of you, Mom. Aunt Sarah and Sophia are teaching our whole family what real strength looks like." As the surgery date approached, I received an unexpected package from Patrick and the Donnelly clan in Chicago. A handmade quilt with squares contributed by each family member, including a bright blue square from Sophia and a new square waiting for Melissa. The attached note read, "Family isn't about matching aesthetics. It's about piecing together our different parts to create something beautiful." It's been 8 months since the transplant. Melissa's body accepted my kidney, and slowly, we're both learning to accept each other, flaws, differences, and all. The weekly therapy sessions have uncovered decades of competition and insecurity neither of us knew how to address. It's not easy work, but it's necessary. Last weekend, we all gathered at the lake house. My family, Melissa's family, and even Patrick flew in from Chicago. Sophia and Emma spent hours on the dock. Emma's hair freshly dyed a temporary pink that matched perfectly with Sophia's current lavender shade. My father, watching them from the porch, simply said, "I wish I'd understood sooner." Sometimes the family we're born into isn't equipped to love us as we are. Sometimes we have to find our chosen family, like I did with the Donnellys. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we get the chance to rebuild what was broken and create something new, something real. The truth is, we all blur things that make us uncomfortable, parts of others, parts of ourselves. But healing begins when we choose to see clearly, even when it hurts, when we choose to be seen, even when it's scary. My sister blurred my daughter out of her wedding photos, and months later, I gave her my kidney. Not because I forgot what she did, but because I refused to let her actions determine mine. Because family, real family, is built on forgiveness, not perfection. If you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or like you didn't fit someone else's ideal image, know this: your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see you clearly. You don't need to blur yourself to belong. If you've found something valuable in my story, please subscribe for more real conversations about family, healing, and finding your authentic place in the world. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to disappear.